Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Show. It's episode 589. I've got my great co-host, Stephen Saunders, with me from Zipfish. We haven't got a guest this week. Unfortunately, our planned guest had to drop out because of personal circumstances, understandable ones as well. Stephen and myself, I think we've found a really interesting subject. I'm going to let Stephen introduce himself first. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Yeah, just like you said, my name is Steven Souter. I'm from zipfish.io, where we make WordPress fast by optimizing both the WordPress code and the code that runs the server.
Right. And our subject today is going to be hiring staff, freelancers, hiring full-time people, hiring subcontractors, the whole field of hiring, which in truth can normally be a bit of a nightmare. So me and Stephen are going to give us our perspectives, maybe some words of wisdom. Well, you get that from Stephen. I'm not sure how much wisdom you're going to get from me. But we're going to share our general experiences. And if you don't agree with us or you want to pass a comment, please leave us some notes on Facebook or on the WP YouTube channel. I will answer all your questions or comments. So, Stephen, you've been trying to hire some people lately. What has the recent experience? Are there any insights that it's taught you so far, Stephen?
Yeah, I think right now that hiring market is really interesting because it feels extremely hot, much like the housing market. There's a lot of people that are looking for jobs, but it seems like the top tier talent has places and has a lot of people looking for them and out there trying to find them. So if you're, we'll just arbitrarily say, if you're above the 50% mark, it seems like in whatever industry you're in, but specifically I'm talking about development, like coding and that kind of stuff. It feels like it's hard to find good people. I've interviewed a ton of people, and I feel like I've had to interview more people today to find a good person than I, had to maybe 5 years ago, which is interesting. I don't know if it goes hand in hand with like when the economy grows that it's harder to find people. I assume that would make sense because there's more people, more work, so more people are looking for jobs, or there's people looking for jobs, but like there's a lot of work out there, so employers are looking to hire people is what I'm trying to say. I said that wrong. So it's really hard finding a good person. And I feel like whenever you're hiring somebody, there's always like that tension between I have work that needs to get done and it needs to get done now. And I don't have somebody to do that. So I need to find somebody to do that. And if you choose to go down the route of hiring a full-time person, there's this pain of like, it takes time to find that right person. And how long do you let the current team, burn the candle at both ends to try to get the work done versus just hiring the first person you find and not, waiting to find the exact person that fits all of your needs, your criteria, and the company culture. There's just so many things that go into finding the right person. It's not just like, hey, can you do X, Y, or Z? There's a lot more around hiring an individual than that. Which is why sometimes I think it's better to just, find a contractor to get work done. But when you have, a certain level of steady threshold of work, it's probably, at least in my experience, better to find a full-time person to come work for you on your team. There's just a little bit more buy-in and a little bit more, I think, strategic thinking that goes around when an employee is part of a team and plans to be there for a long time versus a contractor who's just, project-based. But that's my own personal experience. I know some people that have like done some great things with complete contractor teams. And I would honestly love to know how people find really good contractors to work with. I feel like that's something that I've always struggled with, whether it's, going on online marketplaces like Upwork or I don't know, like 1,000 other different places. Finding good people is hard, whether you're hiring full time or not.
There isn't really 1,000 places, really, Stephen. but I think hiring people is a bit like dating.
Yeah.
And if you want to attract really good subcontractors, you really got to put yourself in their mindset as well. What they're looking for is which is difficult to supply, is a consistent stream of work that you're paid reasonably, I'll say often, but that just goes with the territory, but you're promptly paid, to put it that way. That there's a consistent level of work, and the person you're working for as a subcontractor has some idea what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I think that like the problems that I've ran into with contracting work out has always been that there isn't necessarily a steady enough stream of work, right? So we're, maybe giving them 10, 20 hours a week, sometimes less, sometimes nothing. And then, so they're always filling their books with other people's projects. And then there's these moments where you're like, oh, I need something ASAP, but they're working on other people's stuff. And you can't, they're dictating their own time. And they're going to, gravitate towards people that give them steady work. That's work that they enjoy and good work. And maybe that's like where I've always ran into the problem, is that generally whenever I've looked for contractors, it's been, 10 hours a week or something, around that. And so it's always hard to be taken as a priority, I think, when you are giving somebody less hours than when you have, something that you can give somebody full time, right? Even if they're a contractor, they're essentially a full-time employee. You're just paying them differently. Watch out if you're in the state of California, though.
Yeah, I would not suggest, actually, and not only in California, but in the Internal Revenue Service, you can actually get into some hot water there. I don't hire anybody on that would get close to that threshold of could be seen as they are actually really being employed by me. I don't even get to that threshold with my offshore employees. I think the thing is there is no golden answer to this, but I think to some level, putting your best subcontractors on a retainer basis is also a really good idea compared to the cost of a full-time employee, especially if you're talking about offshore subcontractors. The cost savings are still going to be considerable, probably at a third of the cost of hiring somebody that could be of the quality that you're looking for domestically. Let's talk about your hiring process. Has that changed? Has that changed your interview? And have you got a methodology that you stick to or does it really just go with your gut feeling and the way you interact with the individual?
Yeah, I would love to say that we have like some really intricate hiring process where we have all of these, like, I don't know, hoops or tests or check boxes that somebody has to fill. But in reality, like we're evaluating people on two things. One, do they have the skills to do the job? And really the only way that we determine that, we don't do like any sort of like coding test or here's a test project.
I personally think they're useless anyway, myself.
Yeah. I've never had good luck with them. I feel like there's been a couple times where I've worked with companies that have used like test things. And honestly, I don't think they pinpointed good employees or bad employees very easily. So really it's what past projects have they done and can they intelligently talk about them? And if they have good past projects that are applicable to what we're doing and they can intelligently discuss what they did on them, what the project was like, things that they would do different, things that they liked about it, the tools and the libraries that they used. And if they're talking about it in a very strategical and logical sort of way, it's pretty easy to ascertain if they really understood that project or if they were just like some ancillary person that barely knew anything about the project as a whole. Like once you start digging down into like talking about how they constructed their API endpoints, or why they chose to use the database that they used, or why they're using whatever server environment that they chose to use, and they can speak about those things in meaningful ways. Like to me, that's enough to know that they have enough knowledge and enough expertise on the material to go out and problem solve, problems that we have.
I'm not actively in development now, but I used to be, and also I keep myself in the loop, because basically I do that so I can keep myself. I can tell reasonably well now what level a person's at. You get a feeling for it, and the way they talk, like what you've just outlined. But the other factor is that's not taken into account is that I've had a couple people that were subcontractors who, when it came to the code, were brilliant. When it came to their communication and ability to work with other members of my team, they've been useless. And I've had to let them go quite rapidly because they've been an extremely disruptive factor that's actually... so would you agree with that?
Yeah, that brings me to like my second like kind of qualification that I try to evaluate people on is just this idea of like, would I hang out with them outside of work? Like, would I be friends with them? Are they interesting people? Do they have, I mean, this is like kind of a weird word to use maybe, but like the right vibe about them. But I'm just using the word vibe as like this idea of like everything that makes up who they are as a person. Like, do they seem nice? Do they seem genuine, honest, truthful, fun, positive? Like all of these things, like would I enjoy grabbing a beer with them, or would I enjoy talking to them or having them over to my house for a game night or something? Now, would I do those things? Like, I don't know, like some people we hang out with at work, some people we don't hang on as much, but just that idea that like, this is a person that I would hang out with, I think satisfies a lot of this other, like, who are they as a person? Like, are they going to be good at communicating? Are they not going to be good at communicating? Are they going to be lazy? Are they going to be fast? Are they to the point? Are they, an A-type personality? Like all those things, like make up a person and who they are and make it, they fit who you are as a company culture. And there's just so many intangible things. There's a lot of people that do like personality tests and stuff. I've always felt like one's gut is better than a personality test, but that's a controversial opinion. I know some people that swear by personality tests, and I think they work for some people. I
also think they are grossly misused, and actually the science behind that. I don't want to go on one of my side subjects, but it's something that peeves me slightly because I actually looked into the history of personality tests, and fundamentally it's a pseudoscience at best. Actually came from a psychologist and philosopher, Carl Jung, actually originated some of the ideas that are still used quite extensively. I actually have time for Carl Jung as a philosopher. Had some parts that were a little bit dicey, but don't we all? But at best, it's a pseudoscience. So
I've always been bothered about how like personality tests and assessments, like whether it's like Strength Finders type stuff, or there's a really big one now that I can't think the name of. I can't think the name of it. I'll come to me. Yeah. But it borderline's like almost like eugenics kind of philosophy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it has that taste to it. You're absolutely spot. I feel you're absolutely spot on there. And it's most strange that you actually brought that up, because I've always been fascinated in the history of eugenics, because, you know, fundamentally it was the philosophy that led to the Second World War and some of the worst atrocities that was linked to that conflict. The philosophy of, unfortunately, poor old Nietzsche got blamed for some of it, which mostly his sister. But a lot of it came from eugenics, which actually came from Britain and also from America. So that it actually filtered back into the intellectual loop of Germany. But it's so interesting that you bring that up, because it has got that taste to it of a what I call a pseudoscience.
Yeah. There's something strange when you boil down human and humanness into numbers on a spreadsheet, and you use those numbers to make determinations about people and what you are going to do with people. And whenever you get
something
to that,
horrible, there's something untasteful about it,
yeah,
isn't it?
and I feel like there's a line that gets crossed from when you are talking about like marketing and selling. Like that's very different, because you're not actually impacting those people's lives as far as hiring, firing, salaries, promotions, all of that stuff. Like if you're just talking about marketing, right? You're just like, how do I sell this? How do I find the right person that wants this product? When you're talking about things more internal to the organization and start assigning numbers to employees and start over using metrics too often to evaluate people, you lose this human element to it all. And I think like that's where like giving coding tests and personality tests and all these, like, I don't know, hoops that people have to jump through to get a job with you, some of that's good, but you have to be careful that you don't cross that line too far, because then you start seeing people as the accumulation of numbers and not who they are as a person.
Yeah, I want to wrap it up before we go for our break. I think the tried and tested methodologies are good ideas. References, being explained about, you know, what you did in your previous employment, what you didn't like about it, how long that have people got a very, you know, this has changed. Nobody now works 30 years for one company now. And especially in tech, people tend to move around a lot more than even some other different industry sectors. But if somebody's moving around after a few months, then a few months, it doesn't look that great. So just basic a structured interview process, references, past clients, actually checking those references, get off your backside and actually discuss some of the work with the subcontractors' prior clients. It does pay dividends. The other factor before we do go for a break is, do be aware that if you're hiring because you've got a high workload, you're deluding yourself, because actually hiring people, unless they're top tier subcontractors that have already worked with you and know your systems, actually hiring people because you're overwhelmed will actually make the situation worse, Stephen. Because no matter how good they are, it's actually going to reduce the organization's effectiveness even more. It's actually going to increase the work burden, not only on yourself and others, because it's going to take at least a couple of months, maybe 3 to 6 months, depending, for that person that you hired to fully bed in. So it will actually make the situation worse. That's one of the nice things about subcontractors when you got them on retainers, is that they should know your processes, the internal ticketing system you use, the turnaround, what certain clients like, what other clients don't like. Basically, when you're hiring new people, Stephen, it tends to make the situation worse, not better.
I think, oh, let's go to break and then I'll
You
tell you
can
what I think about
respond to that, can't you?
that.
I thought you'd like that. We're going to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. Before we go into the second part of our conversation about hiring people, freelancers, subcontractors, full-time employees, it's all lovely stuff, isn't it, listeners and viewers? Before we go there, I just want to mention about a free webinar me and Spencer Forum, a member of my roundtable panel, are doing in May. I'm looking for the Pacific date. It's going to be the second Friday of May. It's going to be the 14th of May at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be going in to the nitty-gritty of new ways of setting up membership websites using marketing automation as well. There's new ways of using tagging. You don't have to use a membership plugin, which you can link into marketing automation and produce a system using WordPress that's better than ClickFunnels or ActiveCampaign. It's an exciting field. There's a lot of misinformation. Why don't you join us for this free webinar on the 14th, Friday the 14th, and learn more about a more modern way to set up these sites, not only for yourself, but for your clients. How do you join? It's really simple. You go to the WP-Tonic website. Right up in the top navigation, there's a button that says webinar. You click it, you just ask for your name and email, and we will keep you informed when we're going to be doing it, and you're given a link and you can just join us. It should be a great resource. So back to our discussion, Stephen, about the beloved process of hiring people, whatever form you're going to. So I made a bit of a bold statement before the break. I think you wanted to reply to that.
Yeah, you were saying that when you hire somebody, that it can inherently like slow down your organization or increase the inefficiencies of the organization, which is true. The more people you have, the more inefficient you get, until you hit this point where the person that you're hiring is an expert in an area that you need help in. And if that person's knowledge that you're hiring in surpasses the knowledge of everybody else in the organization. So this really only applies if you're a young organization, right? Let's say like I know a little bit of React. I'm not a great React programmer. I know way more PHP than React. I mean, I can do some things, but it takes me a little while. If I would go out and we had like a bunch of React work, and I'd go out and hire a React developer that was an expert at React, has been doing React for 10 years, has a lot of opinions on the best way to do things. By hiring somebody like that, then all of a sudden I no longer have to make these decisions on how to build an application that I'm not necessarily qualified for. And so it's going to take me a long time to do the research and to figure out the right way to structure things. But by hiring somebody with a lot more years of experience, they can come into the situation and they can say, actually, here is how you should do it. These are the problems that we're going to face if we do it, A or B or C, and this is how we're going to address those things. You will get those same things with hiring a very experienced contractor as well. But I think if you hire somebody in at the same base knowledge as everybody in your group, or maybe a little bit lower base knowledge of everybody in your group, then you're right. You would definitely have more inefficiency, and it takes a lot longer to get that person, ramped up and up to speed.
Yeah, well, I was trying not to be too, don't get me wrong, but I think you just got to be aware. But I think what you've just said about the specialist is also totally true. And if it's a specific skill and you're bringing them in because it's a skill that you lack, or it's going to take you time to really get yourself up to speed, and there's time pressure. Yeah, totally agree with you. Shall we go on to hiring freelancers on digital platforms?
Yeah, I would love to know your experience with that, because my experience, I've always had problems with it, but I probably am just doing it wrong.
So first of all, I'm intrigued to hear, what have some of those previous problems been then?
Like subpar work or work not done in the right way, and like it just doesn't fit the way that like our architecture or the way that we had things structured. Or I felt like I was super clear on how to do something, and then I get something back that's not done the way that I wanted to. I think like probably where I've ran into the most problems is when there isn't a very clear cut uh, like route from here's where we are now, like let's say a design, here's where we are now and I want it to look like this, get all the assets and make them exportable. But almost all of my work, let's say just for designs and kind of keeping in that same idea, like is I have something, I want it to be designed and I want it to look like something like these other 5 sites, and I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, but do something that's awesome and amazing. And then that has always been a super painful process compared to like using our own internal people.
Yes, I think what you're describing is nothing unusual, actually. It's definitely those, especially clientele that have gone direct to Upwork or Fiverr, and there's a handful. There's about half a dozen of these platforms that I would consider, and there's a couple, but it's mostly Upwork and Fiverr that I'm gonna aim most of my comments on. Basically, it's a skill. It's a skill in itself when hiring people on these platforms. Um, you're gonna the less the multi-tier the project, the better it's going to go. The more one-dimensional the project.
That's a good word, one-dimensional.
Yeah, I think I'm doing reasonably well actually in this episode. What I mean is I have a tendency to ask multi-section questions on this interview show, listeners and viewers, shock horror. You know, Stephen tends to ask more singular questions. I think I'm getting a bit better, but having multiple levels of a project and then putting it Upworks and expecting an Upwork subcontractor to work it out for you, probably ain't going to work out. It definitely ain't going to work out on Fiverr. The other thing is a lot of people tend to go, especially clientele, when they go on to Fiverr, they tend to hire the cheapest person they can find. That is definitely something you do not want to do. On the other hand, some of the people on Upworks, their rates can rapidly climb to the level where you could employ somebody domestically to do the work, especially if there's a shortage in a particular skill, like a highly experienced React developer, attempt to get one of those on Upwork with good, reasonable English skills, with reasonable experience, you probably will end up paying almost a similar rate than you would domestically, Stephen. So you do have to watch the rates. That's on the other side of the cheap. So you're looking for the medium, the medium area where you're getting good value for money compared to a domestic hire. But you are going to have to explain, supervise the work to a much higher level than I would expect that you would have to do with a domestic subcontractor or employee. I've not found anybody apart from a couple of people, but they, like I say, I've actually ended up having to pay them a similar rate to a domestic employee. And then it's a similar situation, but the only thing is, depending where they're working, you've got the time difference, which can be beneficial or not. depending on the kind of work you're giving them.
If you were if you were looking for a
Yes.
time difference that's beneficial, which direction do you think is more beneficial than the other? If like the time offset.
Well, in general, this changes. I think the Far East can be beneficial. If you're going up on Upworks at the present moment, and this really depends. Obviously, when it comes to actual virtual assistant kind of work, the Philippines still dominate that because of their English being the main language of the Philippines. If on the more technical side, it is still the dominance is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. In Europe, it's the Ukraine. So it really just depends really where your customer, especially if it's US based, having people in the Far East, that will mean the work's been done overnight. Well, that's great because it's literally you're getting work done and then next morning stuff's done. It's lovely. But on the other hand, that's probably not going to work with clients that expect you to be the developers just to be there when they need it. When they put a ticket in, they expect something to happen if it's an emergency. Depending on your support plan. I suppose I'm talking more about my business rather than your type of business there, aren't I?
Have you ever used onlinejobs.ph? It's like
Heard
Philippines
about it, no,
focused.
but I haven't.
Yeah, I have too. I've heard about it in like 4 different conversations in the last month, and I've never used that platform, but it seems like people are loving it, and so I don't know. Just was wondering.
No, but I also I think, have you not found out when you've tried to hire people that you have to provide a lot more guidance, and you do have to tend to check over the work much more extensively?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. Again, it depends like what you're paying them. Like if they're lower, I have like probably like the worst people that I've hired are like on the lower end stuff, and the best people that I've hired are people that are on the higher end stuff, like where I could probably hire somebody in the United States to do the project. I just don't know anybody, so I'll post it online and then find somebody that can do it. But I'm paying 150 bucks an hour for the guy to do something, or girl, like it, to get that quality level of work. It just feels like you have to pay whatever top tier price, because there's other companies looking for those people too, right? Like I don't know how many countries, Facebook or Amazon or any of these large companies have employees in, but there's a lot. And if you're really good, like you're able to get jobs at multitude of different places. And so their rates are up there. But I'm sure there's other people that just have like more knowledge, because I always hear of people like, I don't know, hacking the system or whatever to get like work done and good work done. But I've never experienced it. So I think I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard all these stories.
Talking a big game.
I've heard all these stories as well. Clients saying, "Oh yeah, we got this guy from India, and he did everything, and he did it in half the time we thought, and he did it for $10 an hour." But then they're coming to us to sort out a site that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then
you get what you pay for.
They wonder what. Well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. In general, I would still agree with that statement, but you've got to be a bit cautious because. But I think when it comes to Upwork, I'm looking for the middle ground. I'm looking for value for money. I think if you're looking for value money rather than cheapness, that's a better mindset. I think if you're just looking for cheapness, you're going to get into a lot of problems. I also think you want to spend a lot more time looking at their reviews, actually having a Zoom with them. I actually will pay more money for some level of English fluency. I think it's worth paying that bit more. Um, a lot of them resent that because they say, well, it's a technical subject. We don't need to be fluent. I think obviously putting so much in email works, but there comes to a point where you can save an enormous amount of time by just having a 5-minute chat, which would take about 2 pages of notes to get over what you want. And it's normally at a crucial moment when a client is shouting at you and you just need something to be done. So paying that little bit of extra to have somebody that's got reasonable English fluency, to me, is a good idea. But other people would disagree. I think we'd better wrap up. The half hour's gone quite substantially. So, Stephen, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, see how much faster you can make your website.
And I've done something very naughty, listeners and viewers. I forgot to mention my major sponsor, Franklin Ada. That's Costas. What are they? They're a web-based hosting for podcasting. You need to host your audio files and you need a rock solid RSS feed to push those audio recordings to iTunes, to Spotify, to Google Play, all the places that you need your podcast to be available. And I was using another service, folks, and they were great, bit old-fashioned interface, and it was a little bit expensive. I was put on to Costas by Matt Medeiros, who's now their marketing director. I paid for it out of my own pocket, started talking to them and the founder, and really fantastic interface and great support at half the price that I was paying the other provider. And I started chatting with them, and I said I was looking for a major sponsor. Kinster had deserted me. No, I'm only kidding. Kinster were great supporters of the show. And they said they wanted to come on board. So I'm delighted because I think it's a fan. I've moved all my shows to them. They helped me out with that. They went above the call of duty to help me out. And I can't recommend them more. So go over there if you're interested in podcasting for yourself or for your clients. I can't sing their praises higher. So go over there. So it's time to wrap up the show. We'll be back next week with another great guest, or if it needs to be a discussion between me and my great co-host, Stephen. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye.